Cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another one of our webinars. This is our part 2 of our governance webinar that we are running today. So again, we'll pop this up on YouTube for anyone who couldn't watch at the time, and then you can share it around anyone who you think might appreciate this webinar or might learn from it. Please do share with anyone who you think might enjoy it. So let's go on here. My name is Shana. I'm going to be your moderator today. So I'm just going to make sure that everything runs smoothly in the background, that all of our IT keeps going, and I'll also keep an eye on any questions that you guys send through. So down the bottom there, you've got your Zoom features for people watching on the day. So you've got your Q&A there, so if you've got any questions, fire them through for us and we'll answer all the questions at the end. And then if you do need to leave, you've got the leave meeting there at the bottom as well. So I'd like to introduce our panelists today, Greg Verhoef from Greg Verhoef Chartered Accountant. He's going to be running us through this webinar today, and he has a lot of experience with governance and business and other governance. So I will pass on to him.
Thank you very much, Shana. Welcome everyone for coming along again today. It's rather wet and mild day outside, looking out my window. I just had a quick look at the wind at Tairoa Head, and she was gusting 20 knots just a while ago, so it's about 120 k's an hour. I'm hopeful the albatross down there are hunkered down and not getting blown off, because that's a fair bit of wind. Anyway, welcome along today. Thank you for all those who attended our first webinar on governance. This one goes into a bit more depth and a bit more detail, and I hope everyone gets something out of today's session. We normally run for 45 to 50 minutes. We try and keep it short and snappy, and we should be out of here well before 5 o'clock. Anyway, thought for the day. So Kenneth Dayton, I had to look him up because I wasn't sure who this was from. He was the CEO of Dayton Hudson Corporation. You probably know who the hell's that. So that's the company that eventually became Target, and you've probably heard of Target, large, international retailer from various stores all around the world. So his saying was, governance is not management. Short and simple, quite straightforward, and they are quite different roles. And you probably would have got that from our first session. But it'll become a bit clearer today as we start looking at some more of the defined roles that governments should be looking at doing. Very good. Okay, our topics for today, we have another quick look over the 4 pillars because we covered them last time, and the role of a director. We then look at some more detail into a government framework or a plan or framework for the governance. An annual work plan for a board, a risk register, and then what we can do to help to round that off. Okay, I think I've covered off all my wee notes there, nice and simple. Right, our 4 pillars. Now we briefly covered this in our first seminar, and there's effectively four main pillars to governance. And our first one here is purpose. Purpose is purpose is an expression of why we exist for our customers. It's acting with that purpose in mind and ensuring that our strategies are aligned to our business purpose. So it's quite a key, first sort of pillar to have lined up there. The types of things we use to record our purpose are things like straight off a purpose statement, and that's normally maybe 5 to 10 words at the most. It's not very long. It's short, succinct, to the point of the reason that our business exists. The next part from our purpose would be our vision, which is a bit more detailed, and it's where we want to see our operation or our business go in the next 1, 3 or 5 years. So we've got our purpose being why we exist, and our vision being as where we want to be. Under that, we would then tend to put our values, are our beliefs, the behaviours that we want to see in our business, how we want to operate internally, and also how we want to operate with our external counterparts out there in the business world. We use things like a strategic plan to then turn that vision into a set of steps over the next 3 to 5 years, or whatever the time frame might be. And then another tool we sometimes use with small businesses is that exit plan or succession plan. It's not a silly idea to sort of always keep that in mind and to review that every now and then too, as to how do you actually plan to get out of your business. Sometimes winding up a business takes quite a bit of time. I don't mean winding up. I mean, getting out of a business takes quite a bit of time, whether that's selling to other people in the business who might buy it, or putting it on the market to sell it outright, or merging it with a competition or something like that. So having those succession exit plans as part of your vision, values, strategic plan, and then an exit plan at the bottom as well is quite a good thing to have. Right, purpose, culture, our second pillar. So the culture, is set from the board down. And as the board, you should be leading by example as to what sort of culture you expect the business operate by. Some examples of how you might do this is by start off holding yourselves to account in your own board meetings and having effective board meetings. You're not wasting time, you're not frivolous, you're actually making good use of your board meetings. How the board works with others, and how the board expects the CEO to interact with others. You want to be able to have good, robust debates that don't become personal. So it's always play the ball, not the person, and having those sorts of things as part of your culture. Good meetings, agendas, well-chaired meetings where everyone's involved, whether it's a management meeting or a board meeting or a team meeting, that someone's actually running these meetings to make sure there's a good standard of involvement going on. Making good decisions, making the right decisions in the right time, having policies about who makes decisions and what the criteria is for making a decision, and the strategies for implementing those sorts of things. Things like an education or learning mentality, business is a journey, and everyone in the business should be part of that team, working to achieve the vision of the business, and that can all be made better by everyone's continued education. And we're all learning as we go along, and we expect everyone else who's part of the business also to be upskilling and learning and doing new things. Everyone from the board right through to the management, to the team doing the work. Right, go. Oh, it's adding one line each time. Okay, cover all those off. I need to click more often. Okay, accountability. Third pillar in our governance, 4 pillars of governance. Accountability is being aware of what's happening around us at all times, knowing what to do, and ensuring that things get done. So accountability is having clear lines of reporting, that there are clear reports as far as financial reports, regular timely reports of information. There is annual reporting to the owners or the shareholders. There are key performance indicators for the CEO and the team, clear expectations about what sort of things should be reported in there. Budgeting and forecasting, delegation of authority, and everyone understanding what they should be doing. Compliance, our 4th column, 4th pillar. So compliance, there's a bit of double up here. So we've also got reporting comes under compliance, because you've got financial reporting, you've got your tax returns and tax compliance and payroll and GST and FBT and all those other sort of tax compliance. You've got legal compliance, ensuring you're complying with the the law of the land. And you've got to have people on the board who understand all those things to make sure that they guide the board to make sure they're complying with those things. Just touch on internal audit committees. So this is where you have, in a larger organisation, you have a sort of a subgroup of board members, and they effectively become an internal audit subcommittee. They will deal with the auditor at the end of the year, but they also can be a part of the organisation where staff can make anonymous tip-offs, or doesn't have to be anonymous, can just voice their opinions if they think things aren't being done correctly, and that sub-board of the board will look into it, have sort of powers to review and dig into things, and then come back to the board and report as to whether the business is complying with the things they should do. All right. Okay, so that was our 4 pillars. Moving on to the 10 hats. So we have these sort of 2 sides to our organisation here. We have our strategic side, which is the above the line stuff, and that's our governance. It includes our shareholders and our directors, because ultimately the directors report to the shareholders and the shareholders appoint the directors. So that's our strategic side. And below the line there, we have our operational side. So the first one in there is our CEO, and the CEO will then have a team of managers under that position. And you can see across the bottom there, we've identified sort of the 7 sort of key areas of a business. So you've got 7 across the bottom, and then your leadership, directors and shareholders making 10 hats. And in a lot of small businesses, we tend to wear lots of these hats. You might be the shareholder, you are the director, you are the manager, you also do the sales and the human resource side of it, and the finance, and you outsource the technology, and you employ some staff to do your delivery side of things. So it's quite often in small businesses that the owner is wearing 4 or 5 of these hats, and it becomes very hard to differentiate that difference between the governance role and the management role, because they've sort of got feet in both camps. But it's really helpful to understand that those roles are all focused on different things. The governance is really about overseeing, it's about appointing the CEO, but it's about setting the strategic direction, about the big picture stuff, about the values, about the vision, about where the business is going. And it's the directors that need to install those messages across to the rest of the team. The managers across the bottom there, so like your marketing manager or your sales manager, they are focused on on achieving their KPIs and the getting it done sort of side of the business, getting those sales across the floor, getting things delivered, making things happen. So there's quite a difference in perspective about what each person wearing those different hats is actually doing. Okay, the role of a director, we've got some sort of key responsibilities here. What we're going to do is we're going to just have a quick look short in a minute at a job description and how we might feed these things into a job description for a director. I know lots of directors don't really have job descriptions, but I think it is handy to have some sort of document along those lines that helps the board members individually focus on what their role is, especially if they're new to being on a board, or they haven't had a lot of board experience. It's nice if you can put together on one page what that purpose of the board is. So we're just going to run through these. So we've got, at the top of the list here, we've got vision, So we talked about vision, that's the future, where's the business going to be in the future? Strategic plan is how you see it's going to get there. The business model and structure, so that's the structuring of your business, and that's something that is done at a high level at the board level, and then the CEO is normally left to work out the operational side of it. Legal, financial oversight, business growth, and then reviewing your own performance. If you expect your team to be performing, and you expect the management and the CEO to be reviewing the team's performance, then it's really the directors have a responsibility to review their own performance. And if you don't have set down what it is you want to achieve, it's very hard to measure whether you've achieved it or not. So this is part of that too, although we are going to have a bit of a look at a governance framework plan, which helps detail that out a bit more as well. So the two sort of work together. Actually, there's three sort of things here we're looking at. We're looking at this job description, which is very much like any other job description, and then a governance framework plan, so it sort of sets out, what the actual key things the board should be doing and who's going to do them, and then a work schedule as to a rhythm of meetings and as to what times of the year you're in different parts of your business strategy and governance roles at different bits. So we'll flick across into this job description. And I've got this as a template, so if anyone does want a copy, I can flick out a copy to you. Just flick me an email. You'll find us on our website. Get hold of me somehow and I'll send you a copy. It's easy enough. All right. So, first of all, director, job description. So we've got the company name, title is director, and it reports to the shareholders. So that's all quite easy and straightforward. Next bit in here is we've got the summary, position summary, and the role is to maximise the shareholders' value. So that's nice and easy. And then we've got some key responsibilities. So this is where we're taking the vision and we're breaking it down into some tasks and some KPIs. So we've got some things to achieve, which we're expecting the directors to work on to achieve. So in this case, we've got achieve alignment of thinking amongst directors as to the 5-year strategic plan. So that's trying to develop a 5-year strategic plan that all the directors are happy with, which can be quite difficult because sometimes the directors all have different views, of course. Document and review document review and live into the core purpose. Live into the core purpose. Link, maybe it's meant to be link. I think it's a typo there. Link into the core purpose and core values and share with the team. And so then the KPIs are, the 5-year strategic plan is reviewed and signed off. They're able to recite the core purpose and core values, and the vision is shared with the team. So there's some KPIs there which are quite definable and able to be ticked off to say, did we achieve this? So vision, strategic plan, tasks, work with the board to develop a strategic plan, review the plan on a monthly basis, prepare a high-level budget, and so on. And then again, we've got some KPIs which are measurable. KPIs, the KPIs in the budget are set, that the KPIs are achieved and reported monthly. The achievements are reporting monthly. So that's getting systems in place to make sure all that information is being reported through the CEO to the board each month, and that's quite a bit of work sometimes. Actual results versus budget, reported strategic. Okay, so you get the idea there, strategic plan. Next, we've got board performance. So this is monitoring your own performance, monitoring performance against the plan and budget of each board meeting, targets set, strategic plan achieved with deadlines. Okay. Next, we've got business model and structure. So structure is, your organisational diagram, your CEO, managers, team, reviewing that organisational structure. And we've added a couple of words in here. We've got sustainability and scalability. Sustainability is the ability to continue along those lines. And that can be broken down into whole lots of different segments too. So we'll go into that another day. Scalability is, we've got a business that's operating, but if we're going to grow, can it be scaled? Well, how do we structure it so it's easy to keep adding on to the structure so that it scales? Then we've got a few other ideas, you know, in there too, and some KPIs, legal and financial oversight. So in here we've got a bit about key risks, mitigating risks, having a policy and reviewing risks and so on. And I think we're almost at the bottom here, business growth, identify maximum opportunities for growth, identify and mitigate risks, build networks and alliances, share best practice with the team, and some KPIs along those things. And I think, oh, I thought there was one more. No, that's it. So anyway, that's a bit of an idea of, you know, a job description you could have for a director, and it just helps if you've got that role as a director. If you've got those key things in front of you, you know, the vision, the strategy plan, the model and structure for financial oversight and business growth, that they are the focus of this board at the moment, and these are the KPIs that the board are working to achieve to get them. Okay, as I've said, if you want a copy, flick me a note, we'll send one out. All right, so we've got our job description and for each, you know, board member, and then we've got a governance framework. So the idea of the plan, of a governance framework plan, is to really be able to test the business and the governance, to make sure the structure and ensures that your board is set up and working as best as it can be. The idea of the plan is it should address each of those 4 pillars we talked about earlier on: the purpose, the culture, the accountability, and compliance, as well as, you know, outlining things like the board composition, your governance meeting rhythm, and your annual and quarterly priorities. So the idea of our framework plan is that our plan covers those 7 sort of key elements. All right. So again, a bit of double up here, but, you know, purpose is always, you know, key to what we're doing. We put that in the top of our plan. We've then got our vision, what it is that we're wanting to achieve, normally over a time frame. So 2 key on the bottom there. Core values, we talked about the values earlier on, so some core values and some definitions. And on the other side, the makeup of our board. So we've got a chairperson and a couple of board members. All right, and now we've got we're moving into the calendar for the year. So it's quite good to set out all your meeting dates up front. This one here is set up for a monthly meeting. But it's really good to get that schedule out to your board members early so they can put it in their diaries, because there's nothing worse than, you know, having a board meeting, especially a place like this where there's only 3 board members, and if one person can't be there, that's really a bit of a defunct meeting, really. So get the calendar out early, everyone can put it in their diaries, and if it's in their diaries, hopefully nothing else comes across. Things always do, and sometimes you're just going to reschedule meetings to fit around people's other things that are going on. Nothing always goes to plan, of course. And then we've got annual priorities. So you probably want about 6, no more than about 6 annual priorities. Just, you know, the priorities as to what you want to work towards during the year. In this case here, they want to appoint a new director. They want to polish off the core purpose so that it packs more punch. That's quite a nice rephrase, actually. Build out the strategic plan, build a simple slick forecast, KPI mechanism, that's quite good too. Do an organisational review and create a risk register. And then we break that down into sort of quarterly priorities. We've got our sort of our annual priorities, we've 6 of those. And then we break down into a bunch of quarterly ones. And in this case here, we've broken it down to the detail of actually what the priority is for each quarter, what the actions that are required to do to achieve that, who's going to do it, and then a date set. So we've got some accountability coming through there so that we know who to hang if the job doesn't get done. No, we're not going to hang anyone, but if no one's accountable for something, then of course it never happens. So it's good to make someone accountable, or in this case the board is accountable, or the CEO is accountable by a due date, and then they can work towards getting those things done. All right. So we've done our job description, we've done our framework, and the next thing we want to look at is our meeting rhythms. So in our framework, we set out our 12 meetings for the year. So we've set our frequency already. We want to be able to have good, efficient meetings. And part of having an efficient meeting is having an agenda that is, going to cover off the topics for discussion so that people have time to prepare and to bring along their ideas and thoughts. Often there may be board papers covering each of the items on the agenda. And you need to weave a process, I suppose, of, depends on the scale and the size of the board, of not overloading the board with too much. So whether you have sort of a standard way that papers are presented, or whether you have a process where things are presented to the board once they get to a certain stage, rather than just being thrown at the board when it's not quite ready sometimes. So a standing agenda, a good chairperson who can keep the meeting on the agenda, make sure the discussion doesn't spread too far away from the topic being discussed, to not allow one person to take over the meeting, and to make sure that all those others at the meeting are getting input and everyone's ideas are coming out to the table, that there's good, robust discussion, that the discussion is on point and not on the person. Nothing's personal, it's just about business. Board reports, your standard sort of P&L reports, KPI reports, minutes. Good to take minutes of a meeting so that you can remember what was agreed at the last meeting, because I know my memories get a bit fuzzy as time goes on. But again, you don't want something too detailed, you just want the major decisions and what was decided, because often a lot of work goes into minutes and they don't often get read, but when you do want to read them, you want the key points in there anyway. All right, so work schedule, rhythms. That's back to front here. Where did the notes go? Right, so we've decided we have a meeting each month, and our first thing on there is our business plan. And in this case, the board wants to review their business plan every 4 months. So we schedule that in, and we put our tasks down the left-hand side, and across the top we put in the months that we're going to do those. We're looking at an organisational review. So doing that around the end of the financial year, beginning of the financial year, makes quite good sense. And after the organisational review is done, it makes good sense to follow that on with getting the job descriptions all tidied up so everyone knows what they should be doing and what their role in the business is. Budgeting and forecasting, a draft budget before the organisational review makes sense also, because you're actually looking forward for the year, deciding you've done your business plan in February, part of that's drafting the budget, finalising the budget in March, and then restructuring if there's any restructuring required. Don't always need to restructure, of course, but if there is restructuring, that is then put in place, and then job description is done to follow that up. So you can see how there's sort of a logical order to everything in the month. Performance review. So this case here, they're looking at reviewing the CEO's performance each month. Boards I've been involved in, quite often we have a subcommittee that does that. So a couple of the board members would have a meeting with the CEO to talk to the CEO about their matters, about their goals, their KPIs, how they're going, what their workload is like, whether they need more help, assistance, or whatever that is, and your management report so that the board can see how the place is performing. Risks. So risks, we're not just talking about health and safety, although health and safety is part of your risks, but business risks are anything that could affect the business or could result in a downturn in sales or a downturn in productivity, and we'll jump into risks a wee bit in a bit more detail in a minute, because I've got the wee risk matrix that we'll have a look at. Insurance, most businesses have some form of insurance, and it's good to use an insurance broker who can advise you on those things, and they tend to want to review the insurances once a year. So it's good to do that, to review the insurance, make sure you've got the appropriate covers. Sometimes it's a trade-off between what you can afford and how much risk you're prepared to take as an operation. But you want to cover your major things. And what's next? Key contracts, review there. Compliance, in this case we're looking at bank covenants. But board evaluation, like I said before, if we expect everybody else to perform, we also should make sure that we're performing as a board, and maybe that's just an internal review of how well the board has performed for the year, or maybe it's getting in an external provider to sit down with each board member and go through that job description and tick off how well have they gone towards meeting those the things in the description, how many meetings have they turned up with, how much have they contributed, have they been engaged and involved, and those sorts of bits and pieces. That's our work schedule. Okay, next we're looking at the risk register, because we mentioned how that was one of our roles of a board is to cover the risks. It's part of our 4 pillars, and jump a slide. Sorry about that. No, we haven't. No, my slides just get out of order. That's right. Risks, identifying and managing risks. Some of you may probably have likely seen this before. It's quite a common way of assessing risks, and we have this matrix. Hopefully, you can see the matrix in front of you, and across the top is the chance. Across the top is the consequences of that risk materialising. So, if it happens, but it only has a slight consequence, then it's an insignificant risk. And if it has a huge consequence, then it's a significant risk. So you can see how it goes from sort of green on the left through to red on the right. And then the likelihood is, how likely is it to happen? So down the bottom, number 1 there is remote, and at the top it's almost certain. So you can see how this sort of matrix sort of works. And what you actually do is you multiply the 2 numbers. So if it's almost certain and significant, then that has a risk rating of 25. Whereas if it's almost certain but insignificant, it has a rating of 5. And you can play around with the numberings on these things and end up with all sorts of different scales. And it's, I mean, the important thing is that you're doing something to identify the risks in the business. And then we, earlier we talked about those 10 hats. And really what you don't really have the shareholders as one of those 10 hats, but each one of those items on the right hand side, you should be looking to identify what are the significant risks or the risks for those 10 areas. So if you've got a CEO and you've got managers for each of those areas in the business, you'd be asking for the management side of each of those areas. So like your HR team would be asked to identify half a dozen risks in their side of the business, and to work out this matrix for each of those risks, and then feed all that back. You can, of course, end up with an incredible amount of data, and that's where you've got to then use the scale to try and work out what are the significant ones, and what are the ones you can do something about, and what are the ones that you just have to go with, what are the ones that you can insure against. effectively outsourcing that risk to an insurance company. Again, of course, there's a cost associated with that. So we've got an example of a risk register here. So we're just going to look at a few. So in this case here, we've got 5 sort of risks identified there, and we've given them names. So you can see the column down there with names, the date they were added, the category they came from. So we have those 10 hats on the side there, and a description of the risk. All right, and then we've got the analysis. So we've got the likelihood and the consequences. So we multiply one times the other to get the assessment, and that gives us we can then sort our risks, and this is on a spreadsheet, which is logically where you put these. And I think I've got this on a spreadsheet. So again, if you want a copy of it, I can send you the template. And yeah, so you put your 10 department hats on, or if you're the head of department for all those 10 hats, you sit down and go through those 10 areas of your business, and you identify the risks in those areas. You work out the likelihood and consequences. You drop them all into a spreadsheet, and then you sort the whole lot by the assessment to see what are the most risky items at the top, and you work out how you plan to mitigate those risks. So, what is it that you can do to reduce that risk? And by putting a plan in place to reduce that risk, then the consequence may reduce, or the likelihood may reduce, in which case it may then drop down the list a bit more. But anyway, you need a plan to deal with them, or you may just have to wear it sometimes. Sometimes you can't always eliminate all your risks. And then a responsibility as to who's managing that risk, or who's looking after that risk. Again, quite a bit of time involved in putting all this together, and it's something that the board should take seriously. And the CEO needs to bring all this feedback from the different heads of departments or managers back to the board, whether it's done 6 monthly or annually or 2 monthly, or depends on what the board's tolerance for risk is. But it's a really a key part of directors is to look out for those risks, make sure the business is being risk aware, and that they're doing what they can to mitigate them. All right, so there is a snapshot of what a risk register might look like. And you can see down the bottom there, we've got, the top we've got the identified risks, and we've got 2 at the bottom that were risks, but they've now been mitigated or eliminated. So we move them off the risk register down to the things that have been dealt with. All right. Where are we up to now? So that's basically what we want to cover today. So hopefully you've got something useful out of that. What should you do next? Assess the gaps in your own governance strategy. Make a plan to fill those gaps. Focus on what you can do. If you want to get some help from us, get in touch, and we can see we can help you out. We can provide some of those templates with risk template. So we've got the director's sort of job description and the governance framework templates. Happy to provide those, but of course they're far more useful if you get someone like us along to come and sit down with your board and explain why we do these things and how it can help the board. And I work with a lot of small clients, small business clients, SMEs, and a lot of them don't have boards. They are themselves the director, shareholder, and wearing all 10 of the hats themselves. And that doesn't mean you can't think about having a governance side to your business. And with some of these clients, we sit down with them every few months and effectively sort of try and work on that governance side of the business about where the business is going, what the vision is, what the strategy is, and how they're going to get there. And in a small business, that's a good starting place. A step up from that might be to appoint an advisory board. So an advisory board's they're not official directors of the company, but it's a small group, maybe 3 maybe two or three other people. Maybe it's someone you've got, someone else in business who you've got good connections with, who's happy to come and be part of your governance board. And maybe it's like us as your accountant, and maybe it's someone else who works in the same industry who's happy to come and be part of that as well. And you can set up like an advisory board. Like I say, they're not full directors of the company, but they are a board that tries to operate like a board along all those same lines, and effectively advises the owners, who's wearing all those 10 hats, about their governance side of things. So that's sort of a an in-between step between doing it all yourself to just having an advisor like me helping you, to then having a small board of 3 or 4 people that meet 2 or 3 times a year to work with you on your governance side, to then a bigger business would have a proper board appointed. So it sort of scales to fit the needs, and there's no reason why everyone shouldn't be thinking about their governance side of their business. And it's very easy to get stuck in the day-to-day, get the sales in, deliver the products, deal with the accounts issues, deal with the staff issues. And if you're not thinking ahead, looking at your vision and your strategy to achieve it, then you just keep going through the mill, doing the same thing over and over again. Anyway, what can we do to help? So we can, like I say, we can do a bit of governance coaching. Happy to come along, meet with the board and talk about the things we talked about today. I'm happy to sit on an advisory board and be part of that. The fees for both of those things are very hard to put up on a web page, because it all depends, whether it's just a one-off 2-hour meeting, or whether it's going to be 2 hours of prep, a presentation, and then attending the next 3 meetings to make sure things are running along those lines, implementing those documents we went through today. We've got that job description and the risk register, which we provide for free, and always happy to meet up, have a chat with people. I like to get out and drink coffee, so hit me up, I'll chat to your coffee, we can have a talk about your business, we can talk about governance, how we can help you with that, and how we might work together to achieve your visions. And that, I think, brings us to the end of today. Any questions? No, just lots of listening people. That's nice. But if you've got any questions, fire them through. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. And thank you everyone for coming along today. It's I say this was part 2 of our governance session. We also have a whole bunch of other webinars on our website and our YouTube channel. So jump in there, have a look at those, and get in touch if we can help you.
Fantastic.
Are we all good, Shana?
Yep, I think we are.